Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. Lots to cover this week. The big news in the U.S., of course, was the tragic terrorist bombings at the Boston Marathon. And here in Washington, the battle over the federal budget has been re-engaged. Here to discuss the budget passed by the House of Representatives and the proposal advanced by the President, Chairman of the House Budget Committee and former VP candidate, Congressman Paul Ryan joins me in an exclusive interview. And this week marks a major milestone for someone very dear to us. Mother Mary Angelica, the foundress of EWTN, turns 90 years old on April 20th. We'll be paying tribute to her in a special way, including an interview with two of her sisters from their monastery in Hanceville, Alabama. As always, I want you to be part of the program. Drop us an email and tell us what you think of tonight's show, worldover@EWTN.com. Here's the brief. News from the world over this week. As the investigation continues into the Boston Marathon bombing on Thursday, President Obama visited the Cathedral of the Holy Cross for an interfaith service for the victims. The president offered prayers for those injured and killed by the first successful terrorist bombing in the U.S. since 9/11. 3 were killed and more than 180 were injured in the attack when 2 homemade bombs were detonated near the finish line of the race. 8-year-old Martin Richard was among those killed while waiting for his father to cross the finish line. Just a few weeks ago, Martin received First Communion at St. Anne's Parish in Dorchester. Martin's 6-year-old sister and mother were also seriously injured. Pope Francis offered his sympathy and closeness in prayer for those affected by what the Vatican called a senseless tragedy. In a message to Boston's Cardinal Archbishop Sean O'Malley, the Holy See said the Pope is praying for all Bostonians that they will be united in a resolve not to be overcome by evil, but to combat evil with good, working together to build an ever more just, free, and secure society for generations yet to come. And a jihadist attack claimed the lives of 35 in Somalia. On Sunday, terrorists armed with guns and suicide vests stormed the country's Supreme Court complex in Mogadishu. Government sources said an al-Qaeda affiliate, Al-Shabaab, launched a multi-level offensive. 9 militants launched the attack, 6 of whom exploded their suicide vests. And a car bomb later exploded near the airport. In recent years, Al-Shabaab has targeted civilians and Christians in both Somalia and neighboring Kenya. And Nigeria's government is trying to get a handle on its terrorism problem. This week, immigration officials arrested 250 undocumented aliens in raids. And they've recently deported another 350, mostly from Niger. The arrests are part of a new government effort to stem the tide of illegal immigrants, as the country's porous borders and corrupt bureaucracy have allowed Muslim extremists a chance to move freely and avoid capture in Nigeria. The terrorist campaign of the militant group Boko Haram has killed more than 1,500 people since 2010, according to an AP count. As in Somalia, targets have been both civilians and Christians. Another country has changed the legal definition of marriage. On Wednesday, New Zealand's parliament approved a same-sex marriage bill. As in France last week, lawmakers passed the measure in spite of substantial opposition. Lobbying group Family First petitioned Parliament not to pass the measure. Some 75,000 citizens signed on to the petition. New Zealand becomes the 13th country in the world and the first in the Pacific Rim to legalize same-sex marriage. And the gun control debate hit the U.S. Senate this week. On Wednesday, Vice President Joe Biden presided over the Senate. An amendment to expand background checks on gun purchases failed. 60 votes were needed. The measure failed by a vote of 54 to 46. And a comprehensive immigration reform bill was officially introduced in the U.S. Senate this week. The legislation put forth by the so-called bipartisan Gang of Eight would overhaul the U.S. immigration system. Among the measures, a new visa program for low and high-skilled workers, a new requirement to secure parts of the border, a new requirement for all employers to check the legal status of their workers, and the much-talked-about path to citizenship for the 11 million undocumented immigrants already in the country. The last effort seriously to remake the immigration system was pushed by President George W. Bush. It failed on the Senate floor in 2007. More on the latest from Capitol Hill in our next segment. And Pope Francis has appointed his own Gang of Eight, sort of. The Holy Father has commissioned a group of 8 leading cardinals from around the world to advise him about governing the Universal Church and the reform of the Roman Curia. These two issues are reoccurring themes, and they were discussed extensively during the pre-conclave meetings last month among the cardinals. Among the advisors are Cardinal Reinhard Marx of Germany, George Pell of Australia, Sean O'Malley of Boston, and Oscar Rodriguez Maradiaga of Honduras, who will serve as the group's coordinator. They will gather for the first time this October. However, Pope Francis is already communicating with the appointed cardinals. And the reform of the U.S. Leadership Conference of Women Religious will continue. Pope Francis this week signaled his approval of last year's critical assessment of the umbrella group for superiors of American women's religious orders. The Vatican doctrinal critique of the LCWR found that the group largely ignores church teachings on matters of life, marriage, and sexuality, noting that their conferences often featured speakers who publicly dissent from church teaching. Archbishop Gerhard Mueller, prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, informed leaders of the LCWR of the Pope's intentions at a Vatican meeting this week. According to a statement released afterward, the Archbishop said it's the sincere desire of the Holy See to help to promote the integral witness of women religious. And Mother Angelica is not the only globally known Catholic celebrating a birthday this week. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI celebrated his 86th birthday privately, if not quietly, on April 16th at Castel Gandolfo. His big brother, Monsignor Georg Ratzinger, joined him at the summer papal residence. The birthday comes amid continuing speculation of health concerns. The last time Benedict was seen in public, on March 23rd at Castel Gandolfo, the recently retired pontiff appeared frail and weak, a considerable decline from when he left office just a few weeks earlier. Back at the Vatican, Pope Francis offered Mass for his predecessor, praying that God may be with him, comfort him, and give him much solace. The Holy Father later called Benedict to personally wish him a happy birthday, and we wish him a happy birthday as well. May His Holiness Benedict XVI have many more. Up next, the chairman of the House Budget Committee, Congressman Paul Ryan, is here to talk about the finer points of the federal budget and other congressional doings, and we'll celebrate Mother Angelica's 90th birthday when the World Over Live continues. You don't want to miss a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to the World Over Live. The House of Representatives just passed my next guest's proposed 2014 budget, and President Obama has submitted his proposal for consideration. There are obvious differences between the two. And joining us to talk about the morality of the federal budget, as well as immigration reform, the gun control debate, and the terrible tragedy that has understandably overshadowed so much of the political talk here in D.C., the terrorist bombings in Boston, is the chairman of the House Budget Committee, Congressman Paul Ryan of Wisconsin, and former VP candidate. Great to see you,
Good to
Paul.
see you, Ray. It's been a while.
Let's talk for a moment about this budget. Okay, your budget has already passed, so that is on the table. Now the president comes in. He wants $1.1 trillion in taxes.
That's right.
He wants $964 billion in new spending. He doesn't seem to be concerned here with balancing the budget. It doesn't balance.
Ever.
So what
Never balances.
is there common ground for you all to find here? I mean,
so
you've got to come together at some point.
That's a bit troubling because we have trillion-dollar deficits. We're racking up trillion-dollar deficits each year here. We're adding to the debt at such a pace that it really imperils our economy. The president proposes a total of about $119 billion of deficit reduction, which doesn't begin until 2020, 4 years after he leaves office. So obviously we don't think that's a very good starting point. We see it differently. To put it into more of a macro perspective, our budget actually increases federal spending at 3.4% a year instead of about 5% a year like the president proposes.
Now, there are two things on the table that you have at least embraced conceptually, if not exactly. He is proposing a chained consumer price index for Social Security, which you'll have to explain to people briefly.
Yeah, we never proposed this before. This is President Obama's idea.
Do you like the idea?
It's a change in a statistic to make it more accurate, but what it ends up doing is it slows the rate of increase of government benefits like, say, Social Security or Medicare. What we have always said is, you know what? Let's not change the benefits for anybody in or near retirement, but let's change them for the next generation so that they're solvent in order to make sure that we don't change benefits for current retirees. That's always been what we put in our budgets. But if you reject our idea of future seniors being changed to hold current seniors harmless, then the only alternative to get to deficit reduction is to change benefits for current seniors, which is what the president's proposing.
And what about the means testing for Medicare benefits?
That's one thing we've agreed upon.
Which the president has proposed.
Right. He proposed this in his budget. It's in our budget as well, which is we say wealthy seniors should be able to pay more for their premiums for Medicare.
Now, you have said that you have moved to the middle to find common ground. How so?
Well, like I said, our budget does not actually cut spending. We spend more money each and every year. It grows about 3.4%. That saves about $5 trillion over the 10-year period, and it gets us to a balanced budget.
Because each year, we, the federal government, increases. There is a built-in increase.
There's an increase in spending each and every year. What we're simply saying is, let's slow that increase to a sustainable level, and let's reform the programs that are causing such spending increases so that they're more sustainable, so that we can balance the budget. The reason we want to balance the budget is because we think it's a means to a healthier economy. It gives our children a debt-free nation. It helps us get faster economic growth now so people can get back to work.
I want to get into some of the criticism of this budget. One of the things people are saying is, I know you're saying common ground is what you're seeking, but you're inflexible on revenue increases, taxes going up. Why?
Well, because it hurts families. It hurts the economy. And more to the point, we just got a lot of tax increases. Let's not forget that just a few months ago, the president got one of the largest tax increases we've ever had, $600 billion in tax increases. That's on top of $1 trillion of tax increases that he's gotten in Obamacare. So $1.6 trillion tax increases the president's already recently put into law. Those tax increases just started this year. That's going to do more damage to the economy if we keep raising taxes. The other point is the president is proposing to raise taxes not to reduce the deficit, but to spend it. $1.1 trillion tax increase to fuel a $1 trillion spending increase. So, okay, $119 billion for deficit reduction. What we're saying is let's get spending under control, let's make these programs sustainable, and let's reform the tax code. Let's stop picking winners and losers in the tax code and reform the tax system so it's fair, so it's simpler, so that it helps grow the economy, helps American businesses create jobs and keep them here at home.
Now, the Catholic Bishops' Conference has come out again, as they have previously, and critiqued your cuts, what they're calling cuts in the budget. I'm going to read from this piece in The Hill. The bishops said the revamped Ryan plan would drastically cut spending by $800 billion over 10 years. The figure is very concerning. They said since 70% of the spending in the budget comes from programs that help poor and vulnerable people, things like Pell Grants and supplemental nutrition assistance programs and school lunches. You would say what to that?
Well,
they're
first
saying
of all,
this doesn't meet the moral criteria that the Catholic Church sets out.
Well, I think number one, this is up to the prudential judgment of all lay Catholics in public life on how to achieve the ends that we all seek, which is a better life for everybody, which is upward mobility. Point number one. Point number two is we're increasing spending. We're just doing it at a more sustainable rate. So I don't think we should define the rate of increase in spending has to be such amount to be right. And if we lower that rate of increase in spending, that there's something wrong with that. What's really wrong is having a bankrupt future. What's really wrong is bankrupting our country and giving our children, a future of debt. The other point I would make with these important programs is we need to reform them so that they work to get people out of poverty. Here's the issue that I'm concerned about. We have this war on poverty where we've dedicated trillions of dollars, and yet look at the results. 46 million people are in poverty. We have the highest poverty rates in a generation. So this strategy of fighting poverty from the government standpoint is not working.
Yeah.
What we're saying is let's retool these programs. Let's reform these programs. Let's focus on the root cause of poverty, to break the cycle of poverty, to get people out of poverty in the first place. And those are the kinds of reforms that we're proposing in our budget. Yes, it does mean these programs don't work exactly like they've been working for the last 10 or 12 years, but that's because they're not working to get people out of poverty.
Do you think it's time to have a conversation in the church about adjusting something like, and again, you're talking about cutting the rate of increase, not that in the real world, in my budget at home, that's not a cut. A projected increase, that's always an increase.
That's right.
So my question is it time to have a corporate conversation about what it means to federally budget, how we look at the budget, the type of cuts we're talking about, reductions as opposed to real cuts? And do you think there's openness to that?
I do think there's openness to this. I think there's openness clearly among the lay Catholics and clearly within the conference. The point I would ask is, when we apply our Catholic social teaching to how we conduct ourselves in public life, preferential option for the poor, subsidiarity, solidarity, how do these programs work in conjunction with one another? And when you take these principles and apply them to the federal government, good people will have different opinions on how best to accomplish these things. But what I see out of applying those principles is, let's revamp local control. Let's revive civil society. Let's attack poverty one eye at a time, instead of having cold, calculated, one-size-fits-all, inflexible rules in Washington. We have a top-down bureaucratic approach to fighting poverty. These programs, throwing more money at them, won't solve this problem. We need a new approach, and that's what I'm trying to do with these kinds of reforms.
And it always works better at the local level.
I totally agree with that. Welfare reform did that. Welfare reform brought child poverty rates down. It helped single moms get back to work. But it reformed one program out of dozens of welfare programs that have yet to be reformed. These are the kinds of reforms we're talking about.
Before we leave this topic, conservative economist Peter Morisi has been critical of your plan. He says that this plan is just wrong for the GOP, and his reasoning is it does nothing to curtail the trajectory of spending for Medicare and Medicaid. It assumes that the market will fix this, and he says there are places where the market just doesn't work. You would say what?
Well, I totally disagree with that, actually. The alternative is what we have with Obamacare. The alternative is you give a handful of people in Washington the authority and discretion to tighten the screws and ration and price control care. That's what President Obama's IPAB, the Independent Payment Advisory Board, 15 people he has now delegated to run Medicare to put price controls which will lead to denied care for current seniors. What we say is, empower seniors, give them more clout, make healthcare providers compete for their business. Those things, whenever tested, have actually worked. The kinds of reforms I'm talking about aren't new ideas. They're actually bipartisan ideas. It works like the federal program that members of Congress and federal employees have. We have more choices, and those healthcare providers have to compete for our business, and that act of choice and competition helps restrain costs. Those things are proven ideas that, if applied to these programs, can help us save these programs.
I want to move through a couple of other topics. You gave a very well-received pro-life speech at the Susan B. Anthony List, their annual gala, a few weeks ago. In it, you said, don't abandon your pro-life beliefs, because there are a lot of people in and outside of your party suggesting that these things have had their day. The campaign that you ran with Mitt Romney was evidence. It's time to jettison these social beliefs, particularly the pro-life cause. You said, no, don't abandon the pro-life beliefs. Articulate a vision, one that attracts a broad coalition.
That's right.
What does that vision look like?
We need to be in favor of the dignity of the human person at every stage of life. So not only do we speak to the unborn, not only do we speak to the sanctity of life, but we speak to the poor and the powerless, making sure that we can have an answer for everybody at every stage of life. And that, to me, is a more holistic view of how our principles ought to be reflected in our public policies. And let's attract people to our movement. One of the mistakes I think the Democratic Party made is they purged pro-life people from their ranks. We should not make the same mistake in reverse. We should encourage pro-choice people to come among our ranks, and then try and encourage them to help us on stopping federal funding, on the Mexico City policy, on parental notification. There are a lot of areas on adoption. There are a lot of areas where pro-choice people, pro-choice politicians will work with us on many of these issues. We should not push them aside. We should bring them into the fold and try and get them to work with us on many of these issues so that we can save lives and advance this cause.
The immigration reform compromise being moved in the Senate right now was unveiled. It says anyone that came before December of 2011, they can register with the government. They have 6 months, within 6 months, and then they move toward citizenship. Do you support this plan as it is unveiled?
I'm waiting to see the House plan. There's a similar group of bipartisan legislators of Democrats and Republicans that I've been working with on this in the House. And so we're trying to get the House legislation right. I think what the Senate is doing is productive in that they're getting us closer toward a solution. We have to make sure that we secure the border. We have to make sure that we have an immigration system that helps promote a healthy U.S. economy. And we have to acknowledge the reality of the situation while respecting the rule of law, while respecting our laws. I think this compromise tries to do that. We're trying to do the same thing in the House.
It seems to me, in reading all your comments on this, the interviews with you on this topic, this is a moral calling for you.
I've spent a lot of time on this issue over the years. This is an issue I've cared a great deal about. I'm Irish, right? I mean, my family came, my forefathers, when they stopped growing potatoes, in search of a better life for themselves. The American dream, the American idea. We are the melting pot. I still believe in the manifest destiny. I believe that immigration is a healthy and good thing for America. It brings talent and energy and creativity that makes our country great. We just want to make sure it's a rules-based system. We want to make sure that it's a secure system in this era of national security problems, of terrorism. We want a secure border. We want a healthy economy. Legal immigration is a key part of that. And the undocumented, we're going to have to find a smart and reasonable way of dealing with this so that we don't reward someone for cutting in line, but we're cognizant of the fact that you're not going to be able to deport 11 million people if you could find them.
Because this plan will increase student visas, worker visas for high-skilled and low-skilled
You need to do
workers.
that. You need to do that for our economy.
But considering what we're seeing in these little terrorist plots here and there, we don't know who committed the Boston bombing. But they were certainly questioning a student who was here on a visa. What all this reportage has turned up is that we're not tracking these people who have visas.
I don't want to get into conjecture about about the investigation surrounding the marathon, but the problem is we don't have a modern system. We have an antiquated system. We don't have a system where we know who's coming to the country or if they're leaving the country when their visas expire, and we have to update and modernize this system so that it works for everybody.
What do you say to those who claim most of the voters that will come in and these people will eventually become citizens, that they will, by a large majority, find their way into the party that is not yours, and that the very issues you champion, fiscal management, pro-life views,
I don't see it that way.
That those values will be lost at the voting booth.
Look at a typical immigrant today. They're self-selecting to leave their home in search for a better life for themselves and their family. They're hardworking. They're trying to make themselves better. They care about their kids. They care about their future. They care about things like life and religion. Sounds like a Republican to me. I believe that this is the right thing to do from fixing this issue. Whether they join this political party or that political party, I really don't think that that should be our primary concern. Our primary concern is we have a broken immigration system. In order to get a healthy economy restored in America, in order to reapply the rule of law and secure our borders so that we're safe, we need to fix this. Period, end of story, and that should be our motivating factor.
How has the last 5 months been for you? The dichotomy between the 100-day plan, I know you had.
200-day
200-day plan.
Right.
You had, and your mind was on that, your heart was focused on it, and returning to the Budget Committee. What has that been like for you personally and professionally?
So for our family, it's been great because our family's back to life, back to our normal lives. Our kids attend St. John Vianney School, which is our parish school. Their lives, have completely returned to normal. Our family life is back to normal. We live in Janesville on the block I grew up on, where I have a lot of family there. That's been wonderful. The distressing thing, I must admit, was to work with Mitt Romney on the first 200-day plan, where we went into deep planning. We had the executive orders on the conscience ruling prepared. We had the executive orders on Obamacare prepared. We had economic growth policies, saving Medicare. We had all these things prepared to know what we were going to do and then to see what is now happening and how so different that is. I got to admit, that's a little distressing. But what do? You pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, you get back to work, you go fight for what you believe in. And so returning to the chair of the Budget Committee, returning to Congress to fight for the things that I believe in, that people voted for me in Wisconsin to go fight for, you know, that's nourishing. And I just am one of these people who believe that, you know, you just get back and go after what you believe in. And at the end of the day, you know, hopefully you'll make a difference. And
will you do it again?
Your life will have value.
Will you run on a national ticket again?
We'll find out.
Would you like to?
You know, I enjoyed it. Jan and I really looked back on it. I think our family enjoyed it. The opportunity to give the country a choice, the opportunity to meet, you know, literally tens and tens of thousands of people who are so passionate about their country. It was a great honor and a great joy to have done it.
Well, I thank you for being here. We are celebrating the 90th
Mother Angelica's 90th birthday.
Her 90th birthday.
Happy birthday, Mother Angelica.
Yeah, no, it's a big,
fantastic.
Big milestone for her and for the network.
Absolutely.
Paul Ryan, thank you so much for being
Ray.
here. We will be in touch in the future. It is indeed Mother Angelica's big week. On April 20th, 1923, in Canton, Ohio, Rita Antoinette Rizzo was born. 90 years later this week, we know her better as Mother Mary Angelica. For the remainder of the show, we want to celebrate the great gift she's been to so many. Not only is she the first and only woman in broadcast history to found and lead a cable network for more than 20 years, but she continues to touch millions of people today all over the globe. In a bit, some of her greatest hits, memorable moments from her television career, an exclusive interview with two of her sisters, and a few moving letters about how Mother has transformed lives. But first, here's a speech I gave about Mother not long ago, describing her humble origins and amazing mission.
She was from a very tough neighborhood in Canton, Ohio, born Rita Rizzo in 1923. Her father abandoned her when she was 5. She was left in the care of a mother who had her own emotional difficulties. It was not an easy path, certainly not what one would traditionally think of as saint material. And nonetheless, there she is, the most feared and revered woman in the Catholic Church. She is the first woman, just to put her in context for you, she is the first woman in the history of television to found a non-for-profit cable network. She is the only person that I know to host a television show for over 20 years with no script, no questions, no nothing, just Holy Spirit power. And that's true. She is the creator of the largest religious media empire on the planet and a spiritual mother to millions. You know, when we started this journey, when I approached her in 1999 about writing this biography, she said, "I wish you 40 years in purgatory if you sugarcoat my life." That's true. So I told the whole story just to avoid purgatory. I don't know if I'll get out, but at least not in on this account. So I figure that's worth something. You know, Mother really did. She had a very difficult background early on. She grew up in the red light district, I discovered, in Canton, Ohio, a place where prostitutes would click on the windows to attract the Johns, a place where mobsters roamed around the neighborhood. They were dropping fellas down by the river. And I don't mean pushing them. I mean, you know, the big drop. So she saw the world in all its ugliness, in all its struggle, in all its travail. She was in poverty. She and her mother moved from a series of one-bedroom apartments to other apartments. They worked on one side, they had a dry cleaning business, and on the other side they slept. And this would go on for years. And that gives you kind of a background and a template for who this woman was. When she looked into that camera and she talked to people, talked to some of you about your own family dysfunctions, about the difficulties you were facing, about losing a child, a relationship that didn't work out. There was something authentic about Mother. She's real. She's earthy. She's of us. And I think that's one of the keys to her success. It's the reason she kind of captured our hearts so early. And that's what this story really is. A lot of people say, oh, it's a wonderful biography, it's this and that. This is really a love story. Friends told me after she was healed, you know, she had this healing, and this weekend commemorates the healing she had late in life when she was healed of, you know, her legs were healed. She was having stomach difficulties as a young girl, probably because of the emotional turmoil in the house. She couldn't eat, food wouldn't go down. And they put her in a series of corsets, and she went through just hell. And she finally went to a woman named Rhoda Wise. She was something of a mystic. Rhoda Wise told little Rita to pray a 9-day novena, and at the end of that 9-day novena, Rita was healed. She could eat whatever she wanted. It was the turning point of her life. It was the beginning of her love affair with God. She never questioned it again. She threw herself at him. She gave totally. And it really is the heart of this story. Friends told me later at a Lenten Good Friday service, people were coming forward to venerate a cross. And this one fellow, Bill Zaleski in Canton, told me he remembers Rita Rizzo walking up and grabbing that cross, and he said the way she held it to her mouth and caressed it, it was as if she were embracing her lover. She was totally in love with Christ in a very real, passionate, full-blooded way. This wasn't a theory for this woman. It wasn't a concept. So many of us imprison Christ in our minds. Oh, here's my little God. We put him in a box and we file him away. We bring him out on Sunday and then we put him back. Not Mother Angelica. Never. And this love affair would draw her on and push her to do incredible things. Incredible things. She never intended to start a television network. We should say that off the bat. She told me, it all evolved. It was like a snowball going downhill. That's true. I'll give you a quick synopsis here. When she landed in Birmingham, Alabama, she wanted to start a monastery there to pray for the community there, for the racial strife and everything going on in Birmingham. And she arrives, and nobody knew what a nun was. It's only a 2% Catholic population. You know, most of these people thought she was Arabic. They didn't know. She had a thing around her head. What's that? I don't know. You know, a lot of that kind of stuff. So the bishop said, why don't you go around and introduce yourself to the people in the community? So she went to the Kiwanis Club and to the Episcopal Church and the Methodist Church and sewing circles, black churches, white churches. She goes to all these churches. And they were captivated by her. And a group of Episcopalian and Methodist ladies said, Mother, would you lead a Bible study for us? She said, all right, yeah, sure. So she started this little Bible study in her monastery. Next thing you know, there are 50 people in there. Well, they start taping her. And they're so delighted by this. And, oh, this is great stuff. She's earthy. She's human. The scriptures have come alive for us. This is tremendous. So they broadcast her on radio locally in Birmingham. Then she starts writing these little mini books in the chapel on a legal pad with a felt pen. This is a girl who just barely graduated high school. But she felt inspired. She wrote these little books, and people started passing them out all over the country. Charismatic groups started inviting her to give talks to huge conventions and charismatic conferences. And next thing you know, they wanted her on television. And she's in Chicago doing an interview, and she walks into this studio, this little studio, and they tell her, oh, this is going to be broadcast all over the country. Really? She said, oh, Lord, I got to get one of these. And that was the beginning. She turned to poor Sister Joseph, who's looking at her, I'm sure, like she's out of her mind. And she says, it don't take much to reach the masses, does it? You can feel the wheels grinding when she tells the story, too. And you know, Mother Angelica, during one of those early interviews in like 1978, 1979, when the idea of a network entity, a satellite-delivered network, was just coming to her, she told an interviewer, God is looking for dodos. There are a lot of people who know it can't be done, so they don't do it. But a dodo doesn't know it can't be done. And I'm a dodo, she said. You know, she told me at one point, she said, the need we have for assurance, the absolute lack of willingness to take a risk for God is appalling to me. She said, I'm sure our Lord asked a lot of people to start a network, to build a network, but for some reason, he chose a few nuns who didn't know anything, in the wrong state of life, with no money. It goes against reason. Some people think I'm a woman of great faith, she said. No, I'm a coward who keeps pushing forward. And you've got to remember, you have to remember this. Mother Angelica was 58 years old when she started this network. A 58-year-old woman with diabetes, a twisted spine, a lame leg, $200 in the bank, and no broadcast experience. This is hardly the resume for a media mogul. And yet, there she is. There she is. And here we are. And as you'll read in the book, you know the old B.B. King song, "You pay the cost to be the boss"? She did, in many ways, in her person. I mean, she suffered enormously, emotionally, physically, from within and without the church. But she furrowed on, and it wasn't that, you know, people tell me, oh, she must have had this vision to be the next Ted Turner. No, it was never about that. It was about following the inspirations and the dictates of her spouse. It was a love affair. And she blindly followed him into places where, honestly, most of us would never go. We talk ourselves out of it. We rationalize our way. That wasn't God. He didn't tell me that. I can't do, what do I know about this? You know, we back away. She never backed away. She pushed and she went forward, but not easily, not without struggle, not without obstacle, not without pain, not without deceit and corruption around her and people coming in on her and wanting to take the thing down. And that, I thought, when I approached this book, that is what we can most relate to, you and me, the struggle, the cross. That's Mother Angelica's real story. It's not the highs. Yes, God blessed her and gave these amazing graces, and she created this thing that could never have come about through her solely. But therein lies the story. In the struggle was the story. And I've tried to pull out some of that struggle so you can see. We can all relate to that. We've all been depressed. We've all felt we've lost our way. We've all lost loved ones. We've had aches and pains and miseries. We stayed in dirty hotel rooms. But you can offer that up. At least that's what she'd tell me. She teaches us that no matter our failings, no matter the setbacks, no matter the handicaps or the family background, God has crafted you for something unique. He's made you for some mission. And I think the reason it is caught on, and the reason so many people, Christians of all stripes, non-believers, are attracted to this woman, because she is full-blooded. You see her warts and all, struggling for her sanctity, struggling to accomplish her mission, but believing in a childlike way that so many of us refuse to. We fight and we struggle against what God is calling us to, rather than struggling to achieve His will. She never did that. She relied on divine providence, and she united herself with His will, no matter how painful or ugly or miserable it was at moments. And that's her gift. That's her story. It's really a guide to life. Her life has become the parable. You know, for many years when she would speak to groups, she'd say over and over and over again, "The only Jesus most people will see is the life you lead." Jesus is apparent in the life of Mother Angelica. And that's the core, I think, of her message. At the end, it was about loving souls enough. She wanted to reach people who were hurting, people like her, people who came from broken families, who had a mother who was broken up by a divorce, people who were addicted to substances. These are the people she wanted to reach, people who were confused about their faith, and she reached them. It was about love of souls. It was never about television or radio. This was all God's work after that. And I hope when you look at her story, you'll see yourself reflected back, because there's a piece of us there in her and in her story. And when I look at you, I see her looking back at me. I thank you for letting me be part of your family. I thank you for being part of our family. And I hope you will mimic Mother's holy recklessness. I hope you will embrace her boldness, her willingness to take risk, and for God's sake, be a dodo. Thank you for having us here. God love you. Thank you.
For more than 20 years, Mother Angelica has uplifted and enchanted the world with her insight, her wit, her boldness, and her faith. And did I mention her humor? Here's a taste of Mother Angelica in her own words.
Cloistered nuns in television is without question one of the most ridiculous things that could have ever happened. It just evolved. When I went to Channel 38 in Chicago, I walked in that little tiny, tiny studio that I had never seen a TV studio before. We had already been publicizing books for a couple of years, reaching a lot of people. But I remember standing in the doorway and saying, it doesn't take much to reach the masses. And I said, Lord, I've got to have one of these. Would you like your children to be depicted?
Just a minute, Mother.
You have a daughter? You have a daughter?
Just a minute. Let me tell you something.
You have a daughter?
My wife and I were very stern about what films and books our children read. But I did not, I must tell you in all honesty, I did not allow anyone in the church or in the school to tell my wife and me how to raise our children.
If you like your daughter depicted on the movie as a prostitute?
If
would
she
you
was an
permit?
actress,
I didn't say that. I mean her real person as your daughter. Would you like her depicted as a prostitute?
Well, I could probably sue, I guess.
Then you would say it was wrong.
But I would never say you can't do that, because I think that's prior censorship.
As a father, you would have to say, I will not have my daughter depicted as a prostitute, because I know my daughter and she's a good woman. Tell me that. Raymond's with me, and it's his birthday. You know, how old are you?
I'm not telling you how old I am.
Well, do you want me to tell you how old you look?
You really want to know? Well, guess.
If it's honest.
Well, I'll tell you the truth if you can guess it.
What old could you be?
Is it that difficult?
I could say you're 30, but no, you can't be 30.
Why
40?
not? 40? 40?
What's wrong with 40?
I was older than me. What do you mean? 40?
I was 40 once.
Yeah, but I'm not even close to 40, though.
Well, how would I know? You don't tell me, so I'm guessing.
My goodness.
All right, if you're not 40 and you're not 30, you got to be between.
31.
Oh, really?
31.
That's all you are?
Yeah. And I'm aging by the minute.
I've made my statement. I don't care whether you like it or not. It's time somebody said something about all these tiny little cracks that you have been putting for the past 30 years into the church. And now you tell us when to stand and when to sit. You tell us that I cannot kneel before the presence of my Lord. You're not going to do that. I'll never forget. I've said it, and most of you haven't heard it. This woman calls me up and she said, oh, my husband's living with another woman. I said, in my house. What? Well, kick him out. How are you going to say that nice? You could say, well, how unfortunate, you know. Why don't you just open the door and tell him to leave? You can't say it nice. It's not a nice thing. So after I said that gave her that little advice, she said, oh, I can't. What do you mean you can't? They have no place to go. Well, hell is where they're aiming for. Tell them to go there. Most people didn't give us 6 months. I heard them. I was at a cable convention, when the first one I ever went to, and I heard 2 people say, they'll never make it. And one man said, 6 months. Ha ha.
She is one of a kind. For the last 12 years, Mother retreated from public life. These days, she's fulfilling the vow she made to be a contemplative sister, spending long hours with God in silence. To update us on her life now and their plans for her birthday, I went to Our Lady of the Angels Monastery and sat down with two of Mother's sisters, Sister Mary Gabriel, who cares for Mother each day, and Sister Mary Emanuel, a longtime member of the community. Take a look. Sisters, thank you all, first of all, for giving me a little time and letting me into the enclosure. Let's talk for a moment about Mother and how she's doing now. This is the question I get all the time. How is she doing?
Well, she's doing well. I have the privilege to take care of her. One of the sisters to take care of her. There's more than one, about 5 or 6 of us, day and night, 24/7. And she eats well, and she eats really well. And most of the time she's resting, and she prays a lot in silence. But you can tell when she's in spirit of prayer, and you kind of leave her alone when that time happened.
How do you tell?
She just, either she look at the crucifix the whole time very seriously, for a good 5–10 minutes, and you knew that there was a conversation between God and her. And so that time, I leave her alone.
You notice
yeah,
that.
and then other times I just, when I came in, take care of her, she always smiling at me, she's being herself.
Sister Emanuel, what is the thing that she enjoys most these days?
She likes ice cream and strawberries. So Sister very kindly helps her with that.
I've been there when she was eating those strawberries, and
yeah.
you stand back.
So that's the only thing that she really kind of perks up and kind of extra enjoys.
No, I know that's probably the easiest part of the dinner, because she zooms right through it, right?
Right. There's nothing distract her when the ice cream arrives. Like, whoever comes visit her, she just say, okay, see you, hello, and goodbye, you know, like, but she just keep eating, and she wouldn't take that as a distraction. So she just, one time I turn around looking for something, and then she's ready for the next bite, and I didn't know she was ready, so she either she tap me on my hands, or she say, hey, I'm ready.
Tell me how you all are going to celebrate this big birthday. 90 years old. I mean, and if the truth be known, when Mother first had that stroke, a lot of people weren't sure if she was going to make it to 80 years old, and here she is at 90. How are you all celebrating the day?
Well, first of all, we thank God for her presence in our midst, and we're happy that she's going to be with us maybe a few more years. And we have a big mass for her, and a lot of priests, all of her priests. The friar's priest is her priest. Offer masses for her and for her intentions. And we have lots and lots of spiritual bouquet for her. And people send her gifts and cards and congratulations. And we have big dinner, and we will try to make it the food that she likes.
Now, what does she like? What's her favorite food?
Meatball and spaghetti.
Spaghetti. Good paisan. I knew it. Now, Sister Emanuel, what is the lesson that you've taken away, having watched her? And you stay with her some nights, and you all rotate. I know Sister Gabriel's there a lot of the time.
Yeah, she's
but what is the lesson that you've learned from her during this period, particularly these long years of silence that she's endured?
Well, her perseverance, and she's lives what she preached, and she quietly accepting it and offering it to the Lord, which is to me is marvelous, because it's something that I would be tempted to say, well, that's enough, Lord. Okay, I'm ready to go home. But she always wanted to give more. She always wanted to give her all. Matter of fact, she even prayed that she would live long, because she wanted that way she can give more and save more souls. You can tell she accepted, because she's herself at times, you know, just normal.
Sure.
And like I mentioned one time, it does the heart good when sometimes when she gets hold of you, she grabs hold of your arm, and she gives you a good smile, and she hangs on to you. It does my heart good just to it's like old times.
Yeah, no, when you see her, when I walked in today, she had that smile on her face, but you see the effort. You know, it's an effort for her to stay with you and to be present. And she communicates a lot these days with her eyes.
Oh,
Yes.
definitely, because she always had all her life. She didn't have to say anything. All she has to do is give that look, and you know exactly what you. Because a couple of times I said, "Mother, do you remember when we did this and this?" And she looked like, "Do I ever?" I said, well, she understood exactly what I meant.
No, she's sweet these days. Very sweet. It was. It's great to go occasionally and read the letters from people and watch the expression on her face, and she's always so intent when you read her these letters that are coming from people talking about how she saved their lives, how she saved their families, how she brought God to them for the first time. And it's fascinating to sort of watch her focus on it and take it in. And she's very moved by those letters. Sister Gabriel, how would you describe Mother's mission now for those who are just discovering her, and obviously those who want to celebrate her 90th birthday?
Her mission is like, I see that she prays a lot, day and night. Even though when she sleeps, she prays for the network, for successful network, and all the EWTN viewers and staffs, and the sisters community pray for EWTN viewers and staffs, and for everybody who watching, and that the Holy Spirit would touch their hearts. And that's her mission. It's going back to the deep contemplative prayer vocation.
This has got to be difficult for her sister, Gabriel. Mother Angelica, one of the premier communicators in the world, certainly in the Catholic Church, and you know, an absolute troubadour when it came to breaking down new barriers for not only religious but women in broadcast. Your thoughts now as you watch her? She really can't speak at length. Speaking and communication is so difficult. What do you think this is about, this period for her?
Well, when the Lord asks her something, she always says yes. And to me, it's a big cross, because a great communicator cannot talk. I mean, she talked once in a while, but every time she talks, she hit the nail right on the head, you know. I mean, but she could hardly, you know, get a word out sometimes. And to me, it's big suffering for us to watch her. But we have to unite our suffering to His, because He wants whatever He wants. This evidently is His will, because she's still around. For this is only a miracle, only God's miracle keep her here. We don't know how she's still around, because we're just thankful every day that every minute we see her alive is a blessing.
And on this 90th birthday, it is a moment of celebration. I'm sure the sisters can't believe this. You know, that Mother's still with you all and with all of us. 90 years. Who would have thunk? What are you all thinking on this 90th birthday?
Well, I'm still praying that she'd be healed. Because God can do anything if He wills it. If He doesn't will it, okay. But He can easily do it like a snap. Because it'd be wonderful to get a few, at least, words before she goes home. And to really, but she has given us a lot of talks already. And so we are trying to live what she has taught us already. But it'd be super to be able to hear her talk again.
Yeah, that would be a great gift.
But whatever God wills. But we know it's easy possible. I've seen enough miracles with her that I know if all He needs to do is will it.
Well, give her a happy birthday kiss for all of us.
Certainly will.
I want to thank the sisters for their time. Reverend Mother, may you have a spectacular day and know how much you are loved and cherished by me and so many others. I want to give you a sense of the impact you've had on particular lives. Now, I know I read a few of these to you in Hanceville last week, but you'll have to bear with me, okay? The audience didn't hear them. Here are a couple of letters. Dear Raymond, my name is John. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. In 1984, while working in the maritime industry, which took me up and down the Mississippi River, I literally was living the fast life in the fast lane. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll would be a gross understatement as it related to my lifestyle. I drank constantly and had problems with the law. I was arrested for drugs and was placed on probation. One day I looked down at the trash on the floorboard of my truck and saw a little flyer with a picture of a clock on it. Inside was a prayer and a plea from Mother Angelica. I knew nothing of this person or anything related to her ministry. This flyer woke me up. I don't know how it got in my truck. I don't know why I looked down, but I did. It sparked something in me. I went to Mass at St. Louis Cathedral and stood in the back. I felt very unworthy. Eventually, I made an appointment to have a priest hear my confession. I made a heartfelt confession. I wept. It had been years. He told me that the tears were washing away my sins, and I couldn't wait to go to Mass. I began attending daily Mass at Immaculate Conception, and my life changed from that point on. I broke it off with the girl I was seeing. She thought something was wrong with me because I wouldn't be with her. If only she knew everything was finally right with me. Less than 2 months later, I began dating a beautiful young girl that I felt was too good for me. She became the mother of our 4 children. We prayed the rosary, and how things unfolded and changed in my life were a direct result of having returned to the sacraments, all as a result of having found that little flyer that Mother Angelica, whom I later learned had published with her sisters, that flyer in the early stages of what would become EWTN. I've been watching EWTN ever since. I love Mother and only wish that I could tell her personally. I'm in active recovery from drugs and alcohol, and although I experienced the proverbial peaks and valleys, my life has never been the same. I sincerely hope that Mother Angelica has a fabulous birthday. That little flyer woke me up. Thanks to Mother Angelica, I've returned to the sacraments and the church of my childhood. That was from John in New Orleans. One more for you. And then there's this. It comes from a judge. He says, in 1988, I was running for a judgeship in Birmingham, Alabama. I would frequently attend morning Mass at EWTN and got to know a number of the brothers and priests there. I started my campaign with Mass, and on that day, Mother came by and was told that I was running, and if elected, I would be the first Catholic to win office there. She told me that I would win and that Mary and Jesus would help me. She matter-of-factly asked if the day after the election I would come to Mass at the network. I said, of course I would. 8 months later, I never saw her. Then I won election, and the next morning, my wife and I made good on our promise, and we showed up at morning Mass. Mother was in the parking lot waiting for us. She was just smiling. I asked if she had heard any news, and she said, nope. I asked if she had any idea what happened. She said, you won. She said an angel told her months ago. We went to Mass, and afterward, Mother announced to the audience that God had sent her a Catholic judge. She was there for 2 more election cycles until I retired. That comes from Judge Robert Cahill in Birmingham, Alabama. I could share hundreds like this with you, but I'm out of time. To celebrate Mother's birthday, my publisher Image and I are giving away 90 copies of my biography of Mother Angelica throughout the month of April. To qualify, go to the top of my webpage, RaymondArroyo.com. Click on the 90th birthday Mother Angelica banner. The entire Mother Angelica collection of books are available through the EWTN Religious Catalog online and at bookstores everywhere. Additionally, I'm giving away some copies of the audio version of the biography. To get one of those, you can send me an email. Tell me how Mother has changed your life or the life of someone you know. Put Mother Angelica in the subject line and send it to Raymond@RaymondArroyo.com. keep it pithy, and I may read your letter on air next week. Details are on my website, as are the coordinates of a book signing I'm doing on April 19th, Friday, April 19th, in New York City at Pauline Books. You can go to RaymondArroyo.com for all that information. Come on down. I'll sign your Mother Angelica book. The show continues on Facebook and Twitter. You can also find that on the website. The Facebook and Twitter pages are linked on the left-hand side of the site. And sign up for the weekly e-blasts. I'll keep you updated on the latest news as it breaks. In the meantime, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo. Happy birthday, Mama. Bye now.